So some issues this weekend using my Kahr CT45, and this is pretty much how it came. I think there was a manual too. It's got a lock for the trigger, no second clip. Not really a surprise. That's what it said on the internet. So the issue I was having with this, well, first of all, you're supposed to, according to the factory, shoot 200 rounds through it before it's, ready for service. And in fact, within the first 2 clips, I had a failure to feed. It didn't pick up a round off the clip. But beyond that, it shot pretty well, except for it had one really significant issue, and that was if you put a clip in it with 7 rounds, you stuck it in there like that, it was impossible to pull the slide back. If you took the clip out, took 1 round out of it, stuck it back in, then the clips worked just fine. If, say this is the 7th round, if you took that round and you slid it forward just enough where it would still go into the gun, then it would work just fine, even if there was 7 rounds. So that was a real big problem. So let's see, the issue turned out to be, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, when you take it apart, even though there's witness marks here, you actually want it to be about there. The witness mark is a little bit off, and that's because there's a notch on your slide release where a part has to come through that notch for the slide release to come out. It's kind of a pain in the rear to do on this gun. Where's it at? If you don't have it just right, it doesn't come. Come on. So there's a witness mark that makes it easier per se, but it isn't aimed correctly. Fucker. Had the pin out a few times. You'd think it'd come out easier after once or twice. Bastard. Okay. So, make sure that bullet's accounted for. Bolt trigger, thing slides off. A couple of things when you look at it is the frame really does swell. I mean, I wonder if the factory says it isn't a problem though, but in fact there's a little bit of metal missing on this guide right here. Who knows, maybe it's on purpose, but you can see that the frame really does in person. It swells and isn't completely even, but it seems to work well enough, and that's a lot of contact area. Even that missing little bit there, surprising, but shouldn't be a problem as far as how the guide works, unless there's burrs on it. But I doubt if that's intentional on their part. This thing's had about 170 rounds go through it. The issue is when you have the cartridge, to get back on point, you have the cartridge and the clip, it sits right by that ramp. This little, and what I'm referring to is, there it went. Okay. So what I'm referring to is this is the ramp, top ramp, I guess. I don't know what you'd really call it. Peels off around. When the slide goes back, it catches around and chambers it. But when it first starts out, it's sitting about there. So in other words, this cartridge is sitting right there on the ramp. While the ramp had, it wasn't really a burr, it wasn't intentional, but it had a lump at the very end of the ramp here that, was maybe a 32nd of an inch. But I mean, it wasn't an engineered thing. It was a glob of metal, extra metal. In fact, at the very end here, I had a flashlight. You may not be able to see it because the sear's in the way, but at the end of that ramp, there's the metal wasn't completely finished. some tooling marks, in other words. And in fact, if you look on the inside of the slide, there are tooling marks. I don't know if the flashlight will help or just overwhelm the camera. There are tooling marks everywhere, you know, so, but, you know, this thing was $300, $305 delivered with transfer fee and background check, so, you know, it is very affordable, but the burr in the back there was catching the bullet. Was catching on the bullet, so when it's sitting like this in the clip and you're trying to pull the slide back, which effectively moves the bullet like that, or the slide relative to the bullet moves like that, it would catch every time there, and or catch every time you had 7 rounds. After about 50 rounds it worked a little bit better, but the amount of stainless steel that was sitting at the end of that ramp, you would never have worn off with copper bullets. It just never would have worn it off. And in fact, if I thought it was working okay, took it home, cleaned it, put it back together, put a 7-round clip in it and tried to rack it, and it would not move. I couldn't budge it, you know. And I'm not exactly a small guy, so it would not move at all. So I had to go in there with the hone and work it off. And then I had those fine polishing stones that you use on guns from Brownells to get it nice and smooth. But I mean, I didn't try to take all the tool marks out of it or anything like that. I just wanted to get rid of the metal there, which under magnification was obviously not intended to be there, but it wasn't something that was going to go away by rubbing against copper. So it's an okay shooting gun. In fact, it's fun to shoot, it's fun to hold, it's fun to shoot guys on the TV with it. Has a good feel to it. It does appear that there's some manufacturing shortcuts they've taken, you know, to make it affordable. I wouldn't be surprised if, since the bottom is supposed to be identical between this and their higher, I forget, it starts with a P, maybe it's a PT45, I'm not sure, this CT45, maybe it could well be that the select grip assemblies are being used on those guns, and the ones that either have a little bit extra pull and drag or have frame run out like this get used in the more economy, you know, little blems on them, that, because I would call that little mark in this frame a blem. If it had it on both of them equal, you know, then I would say it was engineered in there for some reason, maybe a clear grip, but why wouldn't they have it on both sides? So probably not. One guy posted that it had an over travel issue, or under travel actually, where I think it was a CW45, where as you pulled out, if it was real cold out, the materials would flex such that it was almost impossible to pull the trigger far enough back for the sear. I don't know what that's not the sear is on the firing pin, so that the sear wouldn't actually get released unless you were squeezing on it with 2 triggers, and so you had to remove a little material in the gun to make sure that didn't happen. This in fact does have travel, a hair of over travel beyond the point of pull, so I don't think that'll be an issue on this gun cold weather. But you know, but if I was in freezing cold weather, I probably wouldn't be carrying this anyway or using it. So it's fun to shoot. Did about 170 rounds, 150 to 170. I'm not sure how many rounds. It did have the accuracy issues that they said that it would have when it's breaking in, so it wasn't like I also used a Walter PPQ this weekend in 45 caliber. Just got that up, and so far anyway, the PPQ is just an unbelievable. In fact, hold on, I'll grab it. Walter PPQ with big fat, nice fat barrel on it. This gun is like dreamy to shoot. You wouldn't believe how accurate and easy this thing is to shoot, how low recoil is. Although I wouldn't call the Kahr a heavy recoil gun either. Not nearly so much as like I have a couple of 40 cal Smith & Wesson 40 cals, PPQ. An FNH, no, not, I think it's an FNH. So I have a couple of 10 millimeters, and on the VP40, you know, those things really can jar you. but this gun is just really quite sweet and very accurate. I mean, this may one day have the Kahr may one day have the accuracy that people say that it has, but right now it's not a very, you know, it's not as good as you would, as people say its potential is not yet. I was having quite a few real flyers with this, but who knows, maybe it's not getting a consistent, the rounds wasn't consistently seating when it's trying to rip apart the metal on the cartridge as it's closing. I don't know, but anyhow, it is a lot of fun to shoot. Trigger's not, I don't know, depends. I mean, like if you ran into someone with this and you're shaking, nervous, you'd still definitely have to fire it. If you ran into someone with this, you'd better be damn careful, because once your finger comes to the stop, it's totally sweet, but you could very easily accidentally shoot someone. You definitely, if you're in a standoff, you'd want your finger out here, not there, because this gun is really easy to fire. This gun will take a little more intent. Can't put a light on this one though, but it's more of a carry gun. Thin, small, but I still use. This is what I actually carry, the PPQ. It's so nice and thin that, yeah, it's still thinner. Oh, this is a PPS, sorry, not a PPQ. This one's definitely loaded, so put it away. And we have the PPQ 45. PPQ is quite a bit longer, has a longer sight radius too, so that gives it an advantage. But this guy, really something to shoot. Pretty nice light carry gun with some issues though, but I think they're corrected now. Thanks for watching. Hope this. If you're looking, there's not a lot of videos out on the CT45, so I thought I'd put something out there. It is a lot of fun to shoot though. And even though, you know, on the inside, it looks like there's some compromises. But yeah, one last thing I forgot to mention on this thing that really surprised me is this is the thing that when you pull the trigger back on the thing, it releases the firing pin so that it can come forward. And so this would be your sear. This ain't really a pointer, but this would be your sear. This thing right here, the front surface. And I was a little surprised to see, you can see it better under magnification, but this might still show up on camera. This sear is actually plated, probably like nickel or something. I don't know what they would use, but maybe it's nickel. Someone commented that the barrel's nickel plated, so you got the nickel coming off of the sear on the top, and actually on the front surface of the sear where the break would actually occur. Keep it in the camera. So there's a little bit of that metal coming off, a little plating. Back in the day I had a little Raven 25 that did the same thing. It seemed like it had that plating. I've seen it before. I was a little surprised though, because I would have thought that the sear part here wouldn't have any plating on it, and if it did, it would be a hard plate that, you know, really wouldn't come off. So I'm a little surprised about that. Just something to mention. I mean, the trigger still seems to be okay, but I would imagine if it had like a nickel or even a chrome plate on it when you were first shooting it and the plating's all in place, it would have a more glassy feel that maybe would go away. I mean, it looks to me like you could almost peel it off, but it doesn't seem like it's peeling off. But, well, I mean, it has apparently during shooting. I'm sure they didn't ship it like that.